How the mighty have really fallen. I didn't know. I didn't think he would receive life in prison, to be quite honest.
I mean, it's jarring to see him like that when there's been unconfirmed reports of the lavish life he lived. But just 7 years ago, right? 2019 is the year of Evergrande, I think, because throughout that year, the number of deals he signed, every month, there's some kind of deal he signed, culminating toward the end of that year when they had a press conference where they had this long table with 60 partners sitting all at one table, right? Signing this deal. And he was like, da, 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 he, he. He had those famous words. And he wanted to be a top 5 global automakers in 3 to 5 years. This was from 2019. So after 3 and 5 years, he's in prison for life.
Welcome to China EVs and More. Each week, my co-host Lei Xing and I unpack the key developments shaping the global EV, AV, and mobility sectors. We'll give you an unfiltered, on-the-ground perspective from decades of experience and trusted relationships in China and worldwide. I'm Tu Li, Managing Director at Sino Auto Insights, an advisory firm that focuses on innovation in the global mobility and transportation space. Some topics we discuss come from my Sino Auto Insights newsletter. For deeper analysis, subscribe at sinoautoinsights.substack.com. Importantly, this is not investment advice, so please do your own research. If you value the show, please like, subscribe, and share. It helps us keep you ahead of the fast-moving industry. Lei, can you please, on the eve of the end of summer, Lei, and our kids back to school, Lei, can you please introduce yourself?
I didn't know there was actually a date that is signaling the end of summer. But anyways, this is your co-host, Lei Xing, founder of Auto Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review, and this is episode 259. So, headlines: Chengdu Motor Show, Jeep makes the comeback with the establishment of DSAT, that S meaning Stellantis. A major recall that just happened this morning. China local time, that was announced over 4.5 million vehicles being recalled. So NIO got to 140,000 units on the ES8. Congrats. Some headlines, I just catching up. And the Chengdu Motor Show, we probably should spend a little bit of time on it because the Germans are at it.
Yes,
this
I
year.
saw that.
Because they're actually competing amongst themselves while they're trying to compete with the Chinese. The classic example is the announcement of the Neue Klasse iX3, which interestingly, what they did not only is the lower than expected starting price, the pre-sales price, but also those are the final pricing. None of the pre-sale and then launch price, we're just going to go at it. You can buy it. And it undercut Mercedes electric GLC by like 30,000 RMB, I think, the starting price. And remember 5 years ago, the original iX3, how much it was launched and how much they had to cut the pricing. They learned a lesson.
Yeah, Chengdu Motor Show is a little bit under the radar just because it's summertime. But if anything, the other two auto shows that matter are probably Chengdu and Guangzhou.
And it's got this Momenta R7 intelligent driving, a CLTC range of 919. Interesting number. 919 kilometers. But that's on the upper trim, which is like 340,000 RMB. But still, that price point was how much the original iX3 cost after the price cut for the base version. That's how far 5 years have kind of taught or forced the premiums to change their game.
Yeah, it's definitely reflecting on the pricing power that the legacy automakers have had to now, especially because I don't know if there's a such thing as pricing power anymore, at least in the automotive space, just because it's so brutally competitive, and anyone that tries to make an extra couple hundred RMB on a car is likely going to lose that sale.
And then you have the other extreme, the SAIC Volkswagen ID Era 5S sedan launching starting at under 90,000 RMB. So everybody's calling it the electric La Vida. Those know the Chinese auto market remember what the La Vida did for the Volkswagen brand back in the days.
That's a bold statement. Right? The electric La Vida?
It is, right? 90,000 RMB, less than $15,000 with Horizon, which is the Horizon Robotics intelligent driving solution, urban solution.
Let's again put that into perspective, Lei, because $15,000, now they're competing directly with BYD. Before, on the ICE side, I don't think Volkswagen ever really directly competed against BYD, but that's the case now. And VW is now competing with Chery and GLE, Wuling. They're competing directly with.
XPeng Motor MO3 is the 100,000 RMB electric sedan. So, yeah.
This is the new normal in China for the legacy automakers. And if they can claw back a couple points of share, Volkswagen brand, that's a win. That's a win for them.
So along with the ID Aero 5S, Volkswagen actually showed 3 other ID Aero models, the 9X, the 8X, and the 5X, which is the pure battery electric SUV they're launching in Q4. And one number they threw out was the 9X cumulative sales since end of April launch is 13,000 units. So roughly 4 months. I think that's a fail in terms of if we want to grade it.
Well, they announced the sales numbers.
So 13,000
that's something.
Is not great. It would have been, my expectations would have been at least 5,000 a month.
Yeah.
Because during the Beijing Auto Show, how much that model was so popular, that reflects the current competitive dynamics.
It must be dizzying for the German Volkswagen folks, the leftover ones that are working in China, to try to keep up with the local Volkswagen folks, because the velocity of change and the number of products that are being introduced is unprecedented for Volkswagen in China.
And you have kind of salt on the wound with ES8 just continuing doing 10,000 units every month. It's got the 5-seater volume into that number now. So at a certain point, how long does that continue? We don't know, but the momentum is still there. At some point, it's going to give away to something else. Because, in the Chinese market, nobody stays on top forever.
Would you,
at this point, yeah.
Would you say that the NIO ES8 is a product that offers one of the best values in China right now?
Oh, 100%, 200%. That's one of the reasons why that it's for that size of a vehicle and the branding now becoming clarified. People upgrading just the bang for the buck that vehicle offers. I don't think there's any other one that's like it.
Well, you would argue that some of the Stellato brand vehicles offer a decent amount of value too, but they're just not as popular, right?
No, I mean, they're not BEVs, right? Remember, so NIO has been emphasizing this is the large battery electric vehicle size, which is that share is increasing in a large size market. And then interestingly, ZEEKR, so ES8 is the number one selling 400,000 RMB and above vehicle of any powertrain in China. And ZEEKR comes out saying the 9X is the number one selling large SUV priced above
500.
So now you have these 2 models that are just putting the pain on the premiums, foreign premiums.
ZEEKR is doing well. I did a segment with CNBC talking about
I saw
GLE
that.
earnings.
The earnings, right?
There's that 2-pronged strategy where ZEEKR, the brand, is doing really well above 500,000. And then the EX2 on the low end, or the Xingyuan on the low end, is the number one selling vehicle in China for the first 5 months. It's launching as the EX2 in the UK. It's launching as EX2 in Europe. And it's already in Australia. and a few Southeast Asian countries. But the BYD Dolphin is going to get a ton of competition now outside of China. And we're going to see some fireworks from those two brands.
So we're going to go back and forth a little bit. So ZEEKR, we should mention Waymo Ojai is officially running in 3 cities now in the US for the robotaxi. And we know the kind of the historical significance of that because that vehicle, our good friend Kevin Chen, he posted a video of you were there, April 2021 at the Shanghai Auto Show. When they had the press conference, they showed a teaser of the concept, of the vision, I would say. Now it's called the Ojai for Waymo. And BYD, speaking of BYD, they revealed the Dahan and then the Tai 9 from their BYD and Volkswagen brands.
We shouldn't forget that Uber and Pony launched a service now.
It's just about, we're going to switch back and forth. Baidu in Dubai, I would say, and then Pony in Zagreb in Croatia, both via Uber. So now you can hail one.
But Pony is really going to get aggressive in Europe. They had talked about launching 2,000 vehicles. So the robotaxi level 4 is just starting to heat up with the Chinese. I have to say that Waymo was the lead dog in this space with the Ojai, with their aggressive moves into a lot of different cities in the United States. And good friend of the show, Alan Owensman, a couple of weeks ago had written an article about Waymo actually purchasing and importing over 3,000 Ojais that are in Southern California right now. I talked to Alan for that article, but that's a massive number.
If you remember the ZEEKR event we went to in October 2023 in New York, where they showed one of the earlier versions of the Ojai, I was talking to some of the Swedish engineers, and they actually confirmed to me that these were bodies or vehicles built in China, shipped to the US, where Waymo would put those sensors on. And cost-wise, it makes sense because it's from a ground up developed robotaxi rather than from an existing platform.
And from
now we're seeing the fruition of that.
And remember, we have the backdrop of more restrictive on Chinese technology, so it would need to come as a dumb electric vehicle.
As a brick?
Yeah. And Waymo only has one depot that outfits the stack onto the Ojai. And I think that's why, and one of the reasons why there's so many in the United States, because they'll likely be all outfitted with that stack and then shipped worldwide all over the place. So speculation on a lot of things, because remember the ZEEKR Mix starts at $40,000 in China. So the ZEEKR Mix is a passenger vehicle version of the Ojai. And if it's retails for 40 grand, I can't imagine Waymo spending much more than that on the Ojai.
5 times that, right?
And so if we double that 40,000, that means that $80,000 for an Ojai in the United States, right? Because there's a tariff. So that's likely still much cheaper than anything from any other automaker, in my opinion.
And remember, it's that long journey that's now coming to fruition.
The last thing I'll say about the Ojai, though, is that there has been some Western media that have taken rides in them, and they're comparing them to the Jaguar, and they're a bit disappointed in the fit and finish of Ojai.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
well, it's meant to be not like premium, like these foreign premium, legacy premium brands, but premium like Bauhaus and Swedish, Scandinavian, Volvo-ish, that type of fit and finish, to my understanding.
And it makes you wonder, Lei, if the Mix has different bits than the Ojai. I would think that if the fit and finish of the Mix isn't great, then that would not be great for the ZEEKR brands. Let's just say right now, ball is in Neuro, Wave, who else?
Uber,
Zoox, because Uber is happy to put any and every one of them on their platform. But Uber now needs to be a little bit careful because who do they support in which city? Because I don't know if, say, for instance, if I'm in Munich and I'm Baidu and I've partnered with Uber, they also then invite Pony on the platform. So this is Lyft's opportunity because they had bought that company Free Ride or something like that. So they've become international now.
Yeah. And then back to the Chengdu Motor Show, the other German brand, Mercedes, actually chose Chengdu to global debut their locally produced GLE, which I believe may be futile amidst the backdrop of ES8, ES9 killing it, ZEEKR. But that model is significant is a lot of that model is locally developed, especially the interior, some of the entertainment, infotainment features. But launching that big size of a vehicle, not a electric, kind of interesting at this point in time.
The other thing about the GLE, you'd mentioned not electric, the other thing about the GLE earnings is that they're still selling ICE vehicles. Okay. And so there's a little bit of risk mitigation from GLE because BYD is only PHEV and only BEV. So in emerging markets where the grid, the charging infrastructure, the readiness overall for the consumer isn't there, like in Mexico, most exports from China to Mexico are still ICE vehicles, like Russia. We can speculate when do you think GLE will switch over? But because the other thing about ICE vehicles, they could sell them as fleet because one important aspect is keeping factories running. And GLE right now is neck and neck with BYD from a global sales for the first 6 months at least. GLE is a few 100,000 units less than BYD, but BYD is down as well from a sales standpoint.
The big three in terms of exports now this year with over 1 million units. So GLE said 920,000 is their new target, but Chery is well over 1 million units exporting. BYD is well over 1 million units. So we're going to have three companies exporting roughly, if not at least 1 million vehicles out of China this year. That's 3 million units out of 10 million. Right?
Tesla could be a few 100,000 units.
Yeah,
Tesla could be a few 100,000 units.
Yeah.
Some of those exported vehicles by the end of this year, beginning of next, are non-Volvo, non-Polestar, non-Tesla will hit Canadian ports.
And remember some of these exports, I was reading that, speaking of Horizon Robotics, the ZEEKR 7 GT launched in Europe actually comes with a Bosch system integrating Horizon Robotics chips, Journey 6 chips, and those are going to be in 16 countries. So these Chinese chip companies, they're being exported. They've met whatever the data rules is available, and they're becoming the important component of these Bosches, Denzos, of these big suppliers in their global footprint. That's something I think worth noting, not just the full vehicle.
We all, now that NVIDIA is the most valuable company in the world, we see them almost daily or weekly at least in the news. And so Jensen will need to really continue to out-innovate and out-market these Chinese companies. And that's why he's got a ton of lobbyists in DC because he wants to keep that China door open as long as he can. But if we think about the world bifurcating a bit, NVIDIA is going to have to diversify out of Chinese EV brands, at least in China. And so don't be surprised because you'll see eVTOL, you'll see Western eVTOL, you'll see Western autonomous commercial vehicles begin to incorporate Thor and the stack into there because he's trying to mitigate some of that risk of potentially losing sales on the data center side and losing sales on the intelligent driving side in the China market. As Horizon, as Black Sesame, as these companies or XPeng, NIO, Li Auto, Huawei, as they gain steam on their silicon, their own silicon.
And then just lastly, the Stellantis Dongfeng, the newly established Dongfeng Stellantis Automotive Technology.
Automotive Technology, okay.
Dongfeng Stellantis Automotive Technology, parallel to DPCA, which is their current vehicle joint venture, was officially established. I'm a bit surprised that Stellantis did not put a presser out because Antonio Filosa, he did a video message, but that was only shared on Chinese social media platforms.
They went separately.
Well, you're right. The point is important is that Jeep kind of developed with the Dongfeng taking kind of the lead in the tech inside of these two new Jeep NEVs that will be sold in China and globally. New kind of, DPCA is one of the earliest joint ventures in China. Now there's kind of new life maybe for that joint venture and for Stellantis utilizing again. Leap Motor is one, but now DPCA with DSAT is another that will help their global markets.
Where does that leave GAC though?
GAC has their own. GAC has Honda and then Toyota relatively doing well.
So that's dead, you think?
They don't have anything with GAC anymore in terms of Stellantis.
No future possibility.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So the summary of that is basically these joint ventures, SAIC, GM, DPCA. We're seeing a trend here where these joint ventures are becoming tech and export hubs for global brands launched elsewhere in the world, but with the Chinese kind of a ingredient or brain or platform, if you will.
Hey, before we close out, Lei, one thing I wanted you to reflect a little bit on Evergrande. And
I was thinking about mentioning Evergrande. It's now Nevergrande.
How the mighty have really, really fallen. I didn't think he would receive life in prison, to be quite honest.
It's jarring to see him like that when there's been unconfirmed reports of the lavish life he lived. But just 7 years ago, 2019 is the year of Evergrande because throughout that year, the number of deals he signed, every month, there's some kind of deal he signed. Culminating toward the end of that year when they had a press conference where they had this long table with 60 partners sitting all at one table signing this deal. And he was like, da, 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 he, he, he. He had those famous words. And he wanted to be a top 5 global automakers in 3 to 5 years. This was from 2019. So after 3 and 5 years, he's in prison for life.
He bought old Saab. He bought a few different component companies. And for those wondering,
powertrain, like some of those European companies. And then our good friend Daniel Kircher had a short stint right about the Shanghai Auto Show, April 2021. I think you might remember that. Yeah, Evergrande never went anywhere despite the ambitions.
So for those wondering, Evergrande was originally a real estate development company.
One of the largest.
And they were given cheap money to develop farmlands, non-cities that turned into cities, and there seemed to be a lot of corruption. I actually got pinged a couple of times in 2019 to go work for one of these companies. Lei is referring to in 2019, Evergrande, who was one of the largest companies in China at the time, says, we're going to get into electric vehicles. And they acquired assets and divisions of companies. And I knew, you knew at that time, it was like, that's never going to happen.
They launched an EV brand called Hengchi, which literally means forever galloping, but is also taking a page out of Benshi, which is Mercedes.
Yeah.
And they were a major sponsor of a football team, China Super League.
Yeah, that's right. That's not about that. And
tons of money, but that's history.
And they levered up. They were one of the most, in the history of the world, they were one of the most levered companies ever, like Evergrande. And they were taking from one pocket to pay another pocket. So same pants, and they had to renegotiate all their debt because they couldn't make the interest payments and stuff like that. So what's that Chinese saying? Kill the chicken to scare the monkeys? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the Chinese.
Yeah, me neither. Because these types of large arrests and sentences, they're meant to deter in China.
I mean, the share of chairmen of these Chinese state-owned automakers get investigated and go to prison. There's tons of.
Not just automotive, Lei. Remember, Jack Ma was in the doghouse for several years for Ant because he flew too close to the sun, and he did not say anything on social media for years. Remember that. But that's a mighty fall. Remember Wanda?
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember that? Because Wanda is a big thing because it was in Beijing. It was right on Chang'an, their headquarters, basically. So they tried to make that big movie studio. Remember that movie studio they tried to build? And they made a couple of movies that failed or bombed. And now you don't hear anything because Wanda's founder's son used to go party all the time. Anyway, but hey, we have to keep it short today. I'm Uber driver, and
I've been driving this whole week back and forth, but on FSD, thank goodness, which is working quite well. But I know how it is. Shuttling your kids back and forth. Yeah.
Next week, we should be back to normal schedule, hopefully. And then we race to the end of the year where you can count on Lei and I to keep you updated on what's going on. So everyone, thanks for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Lei, I'll get in touch with you on DMs.
All right. Bye-bye.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Lee, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at LeiXing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China EVs and more.